friends, I'm Ellie. Welcome to Cardboard Design. Today, I will tell you wonderful and meaningful fairy tales. Let's listen. I believe you will like it. The first fairy tale, The Daisy. Now listen. In the country close by the high road stood a farmhouse. Perhaps you have passed by and seen it yourself. There was a little flower garden with painted wooden palings in front of it. Close by was a ditch. On its fresh green bank grew a little daisy. The sun shone as warmly and brightly upon it as on the magnificent garden flowers, and therefore it thrived well. One morning it had quite opened, and its little snow-white petals stood round the yellow center like the rays of the sun. It did not mind that nobody saw it in the grass, and that it was a poor despised flower. On the contrary, it was quite happy, and turned towards the sun, looking upward and listening to the song of the lark high up in the air. The little daisy was as happy as if the day had been a great holiday, but it was only Monday. All the children were at school, and while they were sitting on the forms and learning their lessons, it sat on its thin green stalk and learnt from the sun and from its surroundings how kind God is. And it rejoiced that the song of the little lark expressed so sweetly and distinctly its own feelings. With a sort of reverence, the daisy looked up to the bird that could fly and sing, but it did not feel envious.
I can see and hear,
it thought.
The sun shines upon me, and the forest kisses me. How rich I am!
In the garden close by grew many large and magnificent flowers, and strange to say, the less fragrance they had, the haughtier and prouder they were. The peonies puffed themselves up in order to be larger than the roses, but size is not everything. The tulips had the finest colors, and they knew it well, too, for they were standing bold upright like candles, that one might see them the better. In their pride they did not see the little daisy, which looked over to them and thought,
how rich and beautiful they are! I am sure the pretty bird will fly down and call upon them. Thank God that I stand so near and can at least see all the splendor.
And while the daisy was still thinking, the lark came flying down, crying, tweet, but not to the peonies and tulips, no, into the grass to the poor daisy. Its joy was so great that it did not know what to think. The little bird hopped round it and sang, how beautifully soft the grass is, and what a lovely little flower with its golden heart and silver dress is growing here. The yellow center in the daisy did indeed look like gold, while the little petals shone as brightly as silver. How happy the daisy was! No one has the least idea. The bird kissed it with its beak, sang to it, and then rose again up to the blue sky. It was certainly more than a quarter of an hour before the daisy recovered its senses. Half ashamed, yet glad at heart, it looked over to the other flowers in the garden. Surely they had witnessed its pleasure and the honor that had been done to it. They understood its joy. But the tulips stood more stiffly than ever. Their faces were pointed and red because they were vexed. The peonies were sulky. It was well that they could not speak, otherwise they would have given the daisy a good lecture. The little flower could very well see that they were ill at ease, and pitied them sincerely. The girl carried the tulips away. The daisy was glad that it was outside, and only a small flower. It felt very grateful. At sunset it folded its petals, and fell asleep, and dreamt all night of the sun and the little bird. On the following morning, when the flower once more stretched forth its tender petals, like little arms, towards the air and light, the daisy recognized the bird's voice, but what it sang sounded so sad. Indeed, the poor bird had good reason to be sad, for it had been caught and put into a cage close by the open window. It sang of the happy days when it could merrily fly about, of fresh green corn in the fields, and of the time when it could soar almost up to the clouds. The poor lark was most unhappy as a prisoner in a cage. The little daisy would have liked so much to help it, but what could be done? Indeed, that was very difficult for such a small flower to find out. It entirely forgot how beautiful everything around it was, how warmly the sun was shining, and how splendidly white its own petals were. It could only think of the poor captive bird, for which it could do nothing. Then two little boys came out of the garden. One of them had a large sharp knife, like that with which the girl had cut the tulips. They came straight towards the little daisy, which could not understand what they wanted.
Here is a fine piece of turf for the lark,
said one of the boys, and began to cut out a square round the daisy, so that it remained in the center of the grass.
Pluck the flower off,
said the other boy, and the daisy trembled for fear, for to be pulled off meant death to it. and it wished so much to live, as it was to go with a square of turf into the poor captive lark's cage.
No, let it stay.
Said the other boy.
It looks so pretty.
And so it stayed, and was brought into the lark's cage. The poor bird was lamenting its lost liberty, and beating its wings against the wires, and the little daisy could not speak or utter a consoling word, much as it would have liked to do so. So the forenoon passed.
I have no water,
said the captive lark.
They have all gone out and forgotten to give me anything to drink. My throat is dry and burning. I feel as if I had fire and ice within me, and the air is so oppressive. Alas, I must die and part with the warm sunshine, the fresh green meadows, and all the beauty that God has created.
And it thrust its beak into the piece of grass to refresh itself a little. Then it noticed the little daisy, and nodded to it, and kissed it with its beak and said,
You must also fade in here, poor little flower. You and the piece of grass are all they have given me in exchange for the whole world, which I enjoyed outside. Each little blade of grass shall be a green tree for me, each of your white petals a fragrant flower. Alas, you only remind me of what I have lost. I wish I could console the poor lark,
thought the daisy. It could not move one of its leaves, but the fragrance of its delicate petals streamed forth, and was much stronger than such flowers usually have. The bird noticed it, although it was dying with thirst, and in its pain tore up the green blades of grass, but did not touch the flower. The evening came, and nobody appeared to bring the poor bird a drop of water. It opened its beautiful wings, and fluttered about in its anguish, a faint and mournful tweet, tweet, was all it could utter. Then it bent its little head towards the flower, and its heart broke for want and longing. The flower could not, as on the previous evening, fold up its petals and sleep. It dropped sorrowfully. The boys only came the next morning. When they saw the dead bird, they began to cry bitterly, dug a nice grave for it, and adorned it with flowers. The bird's body was placed in a pretty red box. They wished to bury it with royal honor. While it was alive and sang, they forgot it, and let it suffer want in the cage. Now, they cried over it and covered it with flowers. The piece of turf, with the little daisy in it, was thrown out on the dusty highway. Nobody thought of the flower which had felt so much for the bird and had so greatly desired to comfort it. The daisy expresses emotion and empathy towards the lark trapped in a cage. Despite being a small flower, it demonstrates the ability to perceive and desire to help. This highlights the importance of sharing emotions and empathy with others. The daisy enjoys every moment of life, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem to others. The story emphasizes the value of simplicity and the ability to appreciate small things in everyday life. The story reflects on the prideful ideas of large and beautiful flowers, especially tulips and peonies, as they fail to see and appreciate the value of a small daisy. This serves as a reminder not to underestimate others based on appearance or status. The caged lark symbolizes the loss of freedom and its suffering in captivity. This underscores the precious value of freedom and the pain that comes with its loss. People only remember the lark and the daisy when they are gone. This raises questions about misunderstanding and forgetfulness in daily life, prompting awareness of the value of caring for and appreciating the things around us. The second fairy tale, The Angel. Whenever a good child dies, an angel of God comes down from heaven, takes the dead child in his arms, spread out his great white wings, and flies with him over all the places which the child had loved during his life. Then H gathers a large handful of flowers, which he carries up to the Almighty, that they may bloom more brightly in heaven than they do on earth. And the Almighty presses the flowers to his heart, but he kisses the flower that pleases him best, and it receives a voice, and is able to join the song of the chorus of bliss. These words were spoken by an angel of God, as he carried a dead child up to heaven, and the child listened as if in a dream. Then they passed over well-known spots, where the little one had often played, and through beautiful gardens full of lovely flowers.
Which of these shall we take with us to heaven to be transplanted there?
Asked the angel. Close by grew a slender, beautiful rose bush, but some wicked hand had broken the stem, and the half-opened rosebuds hung faded and withered on the trailing branches.
Poor rose bush.
Said the child.
Let us take it with us to heaven, that it may bloom above in God's garden.
The angel took up the rose bush. Then he kissed the child, and the little one half opened his eyes. The angel gathered also some beautiful flowers, as well as a few humble buttercups and heart's ease.
Now we have flowers enough,
Said the child, but the angel only nodded. He did not fly upward to heaven. It was night, and quite still in the great town. Here they remained, and the angel hovered over a small, narrow street, in which lay a large heap of straw, ashes, and sweepings from the houses of people who had removed. There lay fragments of plates, pieces of plaster, rags, old hats, and other rubbish not pleasant to see. Amidst all this confusion, the angel pointed to the pieces of a broken flower pot, and to a lump of earth which had fallen out of it. The earth had been kept from falling to pieces by the roots of a withered field flower, which had been thrown amongst the rubbish.
We will take this with us.
Said the angel.
I will tell you why as we fly along.
And as they flew, the angel related the history.
Down in that narrow lane, in a low cellar, lived a poor sick boy. He had been afflicted from his childhood, and even in his best days he could just manage to walk up and down the room on crutches once or twice, but no more. During some days in summer, the sunbeams would lie on the floor of the cellar for about half an hour. In this spot the poor sick boy would sit warming himself in the sunshine, and watching the red blood through his delicate fingers as he held them before his face. Then he would say he had been out, yet he knew nothing of the green forest in its spring verdure, till a neighbor's son brought him a green bough from a beech tree. This he would place over his head, and fancy that he was in the beechwood while the sun shone, and the birds caroled gaily. One spring day the neighbor's boy brought him some field flowers, and among them was one to which the root still adhered. This he carefully planted in a flower pot, and placed in a window seat near his bed. And the flower had been planted by a fortunate hand, for it grew, put forth fresh shoots, and blossomed every year. It became a splendid flower garden to the sick boy, and his little treasure upon earth. He watered it, and cherished it, and took care it should have the benefit of every sunbeam that found its way into the cellar, from the earliest morning ray to the evening sunset. The flower entwined itself even in his dreams, for him it bloomed, for him spread its perfume. And it gladdened his eyes, and to the flower he turned, even in death, when the Lord called him. He has been 1 year with God. During that time the flower has stood in the window, withered and forgotten, till at length cast out among the sweepings into the street, on the day of the lodger's removal. And this poor flower, withered and faded as it is, we have added to our nosegay, because it gave more real joy than the most beautiful flower in the garden of a queen.
but how do you know all this?
Asked the child whom the angel was carrying to heaven.
I know it,
Said the angel.
because I myself was the poor sick boy who walked upon crutches, and I know my home flower well.
Then the child opened his eyes and looked into the glorious, happy face of the angel, and at the same moment they found themselves in that heavenly home where all is happiness and joy. And God pressed the dead child to his heart, and wings were given him so that he could fly with the angel, hand in hand. Then the Almighty pressed all the flowers to his heart, but he kissed the withered field flower, and it received a voice. Then it joined in the song of the angels, who surrounded the throne, some near, and others in a distant circle, but all equally happy. They all joined in the chorus of praise, both great and small, the good, happy child, and the poor field flower that once lay withered and cast away on a heap of rubbish in a narrow, dark street. The narrative suggests a heavenly reward for a good child when an angel carries the deceased child to heaven. This symbolizes the concept of divine acknowledgement and appreciation for a virtuous life. Flowers symbolize beauty, life, and purity. The angel's act of gathering flowers and presenting them to the Almighty reflects the offering of the pure and beautiful aspects of life to God. Each flower, including the withered field flower, holds significance in the divine realm. The angel's decision to include the broken flower pot, the lump of earth, and the withered field flower from a neglected place symbolizes compassion and empathy. It teaches that true beauty lies in caring for and appreciating even the overlooked and discarded elements of life. The sick boy finds immense joy in a simple field flower, turning his humble surroundings into a splendid flower garden. This signifies the importance of finding happiness in small treasures and appreciating the beauty around us, regardless of life's challenges. The story concludes with the child and the withered field flower finding eternal joy in heaven. This conveys the idea that goodness and beauty, no matter how small or overlooked, are eternally valued in the divine realm. The third fairy tale, the swineherd. There was once a poor prince who had a kingdom. His kingdom was very small, but still quite large enough to marry upon, and he wished to marry. It was certainly rather cool of him to say to the emperor's daughter,
Will you have me?
but so he did, for his name was renowned far and wide, and there were 100 princesses who would have answered, yes, and, thank you kindly. We shall see what this princess said. Listen, it happened that where the prince's father lay buried, there grew a rose tree, a most beautiful rose tree, which blossomed only once in every 5 years, and even then bore only one flower, but that was a rose. It smelled so sweet that all cares and sorrows were forgotten by him who inhaled its fragrance. And furthermore, the prince had a nightingale, who could sing in such a manner that it seemed as though all sweet melodies dwelt in her little throat. So the princess was to have the rose, and the nightingale, and they were accordingly put into large silver caskets, and sent to her. The emperor had them brought into a large hall, where the princess was playing at, visiting, with the ladies of the court, and when she saw the caskets with the presents, she clapped her hands for joy.
Ah, if it were but a little pussy cat,
Said she, but the rose tree, with its beautiful rose came to view.
Oh, how prettily it is made!
Said all the court ladies.
It is more than pretty.
Said the emperor.
It is charming.
But the princess touched it, and was almost ready to cry.
Fee Papa,
Said she.
it is not made at all, it is natural.
Let us see what is in the other casket before we get into a bad humor.
Said the emperor. So the nightingale came forth and sang so delightfully that at first no one could say anything ill-humored of her.
Superb! Charmant!
Exclaimed the ladies, for they all used to chatter French, each one worse than her neighbor.
How much the bird reminds me of the musical box that belonged to our blessed empress.
Said an old knight.
Oh yes, these are the same tones, the same execution.
Yes, yes.
Said the emperor, and he wept like a child at the remembrance.
I will still hope that it is not a real bird.
Said the princess.
Yes, it is a real bird.
Said those who had brought it.
Well, then let the bird fly.
Said the princess, and she positively refused to see the prince. However, he was not to be discouraged. He daubed his face over brown and black, pulled his cap over his ears, and knocked at the door.
Good day to my lord, the emperor.
Said he.
Can I have employment at the palace?
Why, yes.
Said the emperor.
I want someone to take care of the pigs, for we have a great many of them.
So the prince was appointed imperial swineherd. He had a dirty little room close by the pigsty, and there he sat the whole day and worked. By the evening he had made a pretty little kitchen pot. Little bells were hung all round it, and when the pot was boiling, these bells tinkled in the most charming manner, and played the old melody. But what was still more curious, whoever held his finger in the smoke of the kitchen pot, immediately smelled all the dishes that were cooking on every hearth in the city. This, you see, was something quite different from the rose. Now the princess happened to walk that way, and when she heard the tune, she stood quite still and seemed pleased, for she could play Liber Augustine. It was the only piece she knew, and she played it with one finger.
Why, there is my piece!
Said the princess.
That swineherd must certainly have been well educated. Go in and ask him the price of the instrument.
So one of the court ladies must run in. However, she drew on wooden slippers first.
What will you take for the kitchen pot?
Said the lady.
I will have 10 kisses from the princess.
Said the swineherd.
Yes, indeed.
Said the lady.
I cannot sell it for less.
Rejoined the swineherd.
He is an impudent fellow.
Said the princess, and she walked on. But when she had gone a little way, the bells tinkled so prettily.
stay,
said the princess.
ask him if he will have 10 kisses from the ladies of my court.
No, thank you.
Said the swineherd.
10 kisses from the princess, or I keep the kitchen pot myself.
That must not be either,
said the princess. But do you all stand before me that no one may see us? And the court ladies placed themselves in front of her and spread out their dresses. The swineherd got 10 kisses, and the princess, the kitchen pot. That was delightful. The pot was boiling the whole evening, and the whole of the following day. They knew perfectly well what was cooking at every fire throughout the city, from the chamberlains to the cobblers. The court ladies danced and clapped their hands.
We know who has soup and who has pancakes for dinner today, who has cutlets and who has eggs. How interesting! Yes, but keep my secret, for I am an emperor's daughter.
The swineherd, that is to say, the prince, for no one knew that he was other than an ill-favored swineherd, let not a day pass without working at something. He at last constructed a rattle, which, when it was swung round, played all the waltzes and jig tunes, which have ever been heard since the creation of the world.
Ah, that is superb,
said the princess when she passed by.
I have never heard prettier compositions. Go in and ask him the price of the instrument, but mind, he shall have no more kisses.
He will have 100 kisses from the princess,
said the lady who had been to ask.
I think he is not in his right senses,
said the princess, and walked on, but when she had gone a little way, she stopped again.
One must encourage art,
said she.
I am the emperor's daughter. Tell him he shall, as on yesterday, have 10 kisses from me, and may take the rest from the ladies of the court.
Oh, but we should not like that at all,
said they.
What are you muttering?
asked the princess.
If I can kiss him, surely you can. Remember that you owe everything to me.
So the ladies were obliged to go to him again.
100 kisses from the princess,
said he,
or else let everyone keep his own.
Stand round,
said she, and all the ladies stood round her whilst the kissing was going on.
What can be the reason for such a crowd close by the pigsty?
said the emperor, who happened just then to step out on the balcony. He rubbed his eyes and put on his spectacles.
They are the ladies of the court. I must go down and see what they are about.
So he pulled up his slippers at the heel, where he had trodden them down. As soon as he had got into the courtyard, he moved very softly, and the ladies were so much engrossed with counting the kisses that all might go on fairly, that they did not perceive the emperor. He rose on his tiptoes.
What is all this?
said he, when he saw what was going on, and he boxed the princess's ears with his slipper just as the swineherd was taking the 86th kiss.
March out!
said the emperor, for he was very angry, and both princess and swineherd were thrust out of the city. The princess now stood and wept, the swineherd scolded, and the rain poured down.
Alas, unhappy creature that I am,
said the princess.
If I had but married the handsome young prince. Ah, how unfortunate I am.
And the swineherd went behind a tree, washed the black and brown color from his face, threw off his dirty clothes, and stepped forth in his princely robes. He looked so noble that the princess could not help bowing before him.
I am come to despise thee,
said he.
Thou wouldest not have an honorable prince. Thou couldst not prize the rose and the nightingale, but thou wast ready to kiss the swineherd for the sake of a trumpery plaything. Thou art rightly served.
He then went back to his own little kingdom, and shut the door of his palace in her face. Now she might well sing. The story raises the question of the value of moral character and simplicity versus fame and wealth. The princess initially undervalues the swineherd, focusing only on the flashy toys and artifacts he carried. This highlights the importance of assessing others based on virtues rather than material possessions. The princess initially accepts a proposal from the prince in a condescending manner and lacks control over her words. This demonstrates misguided empathy and understanding of character and personal worth. The musical objects created by the swineherd not only bring joy to himself but also have the magical ability to spread happiness to people around him. This reflects the power and magic of art in creating positive experiences and social impact. The consequences of the princess's lack of control and arrogance are evident when she and the swineherd are expelled from the city. The story emphasizes that arrogance and self-importance can lead to unforeseen consequences. The fourth fairy tale, the Phoenix Bird. In the Garden of Paradise, beneath the tree of knowledge bloomed a rose bush. Here, in the first rose, a bird was born. His flight was like the flashing of light. His plumage was beauteous, and his song ravishing. But when Eve plucked the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, when she and Adam were driven from paradise, there fell from the flaming sword of the cherub a spark into the nest of the bird, which blazed up forthwith. The bird perished in the flames, but from the red egg in the nest there fluttered aloft a new one, the one solitary phoenix bird. The fable tells that he dwells in Arabia, and that every 100 years, he burns himself to death in his nest, but each time a new phoenix, the only one in the world, rises up from the red egg. The bird flutters round as swift as light, beauteous in color, charming in song. When a mother sits by her infant's cradle, he stands on the pillow and, with his wings, forms a glory around the infant's head. He flies through the chamber of content, and brings sunshine into it, and the violets on the humble table smell doubly sweet. But the phoenix is not the bird of Arabia alone. He wings his way in the glimmer of the northern lights over the plains of Lapland, and hops among the yellow flowers in the short Greenland summer. Beneath the copper mountains of Babylon and England's coal mines, he flies, in the shape of a dusty moth, over the hymn book that rests on the knees of the pious miner. On a lotus leaf he floats down the sacred waters of the Ganges, and the eye of the Hindu maid gleams bright when she beholds him. The phoenix bird, dost thou not know him? The bird of paradise, the holy swan of song. On the car of Thespes he sat in the guise of a chattering raven, and flapped his black wings. Mirrored with the lees of wine, over the sounding harp of Iceland swept the swan's red beak. On Shakespeare's shoulder he sat in the guise of Odin's raven, and whispered in the poet's ear, immortality. And at the minstrel's feast he fluttered through the halls of the warbird. The phoenix bird, dost thou not know him? He sang to thee the Marseillaise, and thou kissedst the pen that fell from his wing. He came in the radiance of paradise, and perchance thou didst turn away from him towards the sparrow who sat with tinsel on his wings. The bird of paradise, renewed each century, born in flame, ending in flame. Thy picture, in a golden frame, hangs in the halls of the rich, but thou thyself often fleest around, lonely and disregarded, amid the phoenix of Arabia. In paradise, when thou wert born in the first rose, beneath the tree of knowledge, thou receivedst the kiss, and thy right name was given thee, thy name poetry. The phoenix bird is born from the ashes of its predecessor, symbolizing transformation and renewal. Similarly, poetry is portrayed as a timeless and rejuvenating art form that transcends generations. The birth of the phoenix bird is linked to the plucking of the fruit from the tree of knowledge. This suggests a connection between the pursuit of knowledge and the creative spark that gives rise to poetry. The act of acquiring knowledge is often a source of inspiration for artistic expression. The tragic death of the phoenix in flames, only to be reborn from the red egg, reflects the idea of artistic sacrifice and the immortality of art. Poetry, like the phoenix, may emerge from moments of intensity, passion, or even tragedy, persisting through time. The narrative emphasizes that the phoenix is not confined to a specific location but exists in various forms across different cultures and landscapes. This mirrors the universality of poetry, transcending geographical boundaries and cultural differences. The phoenix is likened to other symbolic creatures in literature such as the swan of song, Odin's raven, and the bird of paradise. These references underscore the diverse and multifaceted nature of poetry, encompassing various forms, styles, and cultural influences. The story ends here. Do you like these fairy tales? I will continue to bring meaningful fairy tales tomorrow. Bye-bye!